Hey guys, welcome back to One Stop Biology. So guys, in today's video, we are going to understand ecological succession. Let me remind you that we are right now at the chapter 14, which is ecosystem, and we have already covered a lot of things in the ecosystem. Like we have covered what are the different types of pyramids. We have covered the different type of cycles, like we have covered the food chain. We have covered what is the concept of food web, right? We have also covered what are the different types of decomposition cycle in the terrestrial system, right? So we studied a lot about what is the flow of energy in the entire ecosystem, what are the different components like productivity, decomposition, and energy flow, right? We have covered all that. We are already almost at the end of the chapter, and we are only left with ecological succession, and then we have the nutrient cycle, right? So let's start with what exactly ecological succession means. Now, till now we have learned that the characteristic of a population, right, in a community. So basically there are certain group of individuals who make a population, and then along with the environmental factors you make a community. So basically, these population and community, they respond to environment, right? Now, this response vary from individual to individual or population to population, right? Now, how exactly this is response goes to the environment is what the ecological succession is. So you respond to the environment and you succeed basically in that, right? So you ecologically succeed in that response. Now, a very important characteristic of all the communities is that their composition and structure both keeps on constantly changing in response to the changing environmental conditions. Now, this change always is orderly, that is one. So this change happens in an order and it is sequential. It happens in an order, it happens in a sequence, right? And this change is parallel to the changes which is happening in the environment as well, right? So I'll say this thing again, guys, that we know that the structure and composition of the community, right, it keeps on changing constantly, right? And this basically is response to the changing environmental condition. But this change is not haphazard. This change is always orderly, it is in a sequence, and it is parallel with the changes in the physical environment. Now, these changes basically lead to a community which is near to equilibrium with the environment. And when the community is very close to the equilibrium with the environment, this community is known as Climax Community, right? So the gradual and fairly predictable change in the species composition, this is happening basically in the community. And this gradual and fairly predictable change which is happening in the species composition of a given area is known as ecological succession, right? So here you can see this, that the gradual and fairly predictable change in species composition of a given area is ecological succession. Now, during this succession, some species colonize an area and their population, they become numerous. They basically become more numerous, whereas population of other species decline and even disappear as well. And that is why we always study the theory of the fittest. So basically there would be some species which are the most competitive one, they survive and they thrive, and there would be species who are the weakest ones, right? So they will basically decline and eventually disappear. Now, this entire sequence of communities that successively change in a given area is known as the seer, right? Now, the individual transition which is happening among this community, among this community of seer, is known as seral stage or seral communities, right? So when we talk about the successive seral stages, basically in the successive seral stages, there is a change in the diversity of these species, that is one. Then there is an increase in the number of these species and organism, and there is an increase in the total biomass as well. So basically in a seral community, what all things are happening? So in a seral community, right, there is a change in diversity of the species of organisms which are present there. Then there is increase in number of species as well. And after that, there is increase in total biomass because any which way the number of species are increasing. Right. So if we talk about the present day communities in the world, which basically is because of the succession itself, right? And this succession has happened over millions of years since life started. And actual succession and evolution would have been parallel process at that time. So there would be succession of species and those species would be evolving as well. Right. So basically succession is a process that starts in an area where no living organisms are there, right? And then there could be areas where no living organisms ever existed, like say the bare rocks, right? It somehow lost all the living organisms that existed there. Now the where there are no, remember where there are no living organisms, right? These are known as primary succession. And then where there are some living organisms which would have occurred is secondary succession. So let's take an example as well now. Now say um, a newly created pond. What happens there? The established of a new biotic community will be slow. Now before the biotic community can be established, there must be soil, right? So these basic, or say there are rocks. Now weathering of rock happens and ultimately soils are being created. Now once soil is there, then the biotic community, the start of biotic community happens, and depending on the environmental factors like climate, say, it takes this natural process, even hundreds or thousands of years to produce first the fertile soil itself on the bare rock. And then it again takes a lot of years for the biotic community to grow, right? So if we talk about the secondary succession, that secondary succession begins in area where already natural biotic communities have been completely destroyed, like abundant farmlands or say cut forests. So these are known as secondary succession. Now here, since some soil or sediment is present, the succession is faster than primary succession. Now, what happens in at any time during primary or secondary succession, natural or human-induced disturbances like say fire or deforestation can convert a serial stage of succession into an earlier stage as well, right? So because basically these disturbances create new conditions that again encourage some species and discourage or eliminate other species. Now we'll see example as succession of plants. Now what happens with them? So again, based on the nature of their habitat, whether it is water or whether it is a terrestrial area, whether it is a very dry area, depending upon that, we name these succession. So if it is aquatic, it is known as Hydrarch succession. If it is aquatic, it is known as Hydrarch succession. And if it is a very dry area, a terrestrial but a very dry area, it is known as Xerarch succession. Right? So basically, both Hydrarch and Xerarch successions lead to medium water conditions, which is mesic. This is medium water conditions. Right? That means neither too dry nor too wet. Now, what happens first? The species that invade a bare area are known as pioneer species. These are the pioneer species basically. So the primary succession on rocks, these are usually lichens, which are basically able to secrete acids, right? And they dissolve water. It helps in weathering and soil formation. Now, these later pave way to some very small plants like bryophytes, and then these bryophytes are able to take hold of the soil, and then with time they succeed by higher plants and even several more stages, which ultimately leads to a stable climax forest community. So from bare rocks, we reach up to the forest community. Now, the climax community remains stable as long as the environment remains unchanged. So since the environment is now stable, the forest community here, because that is the climax community, that will be stable for years, right? Now, with time, xerophytic habitat gets converted to mesophytic habitat. So basically, a habitat which is where water is very very less, it ultimately gets converted to a medium water ecosystem, right? Now, in primary succession in water, what happens? The pioneers are small phytoplanktons. Now, these are ultimately replaced by small submerged plants. Now, these plants are rooted, right? Then comes the rooted floating angiosperms, and then comes the free floating plants. Now, after the free floating plants, we have swamp, then we have marsh meadow, scrubs, and finally trees. And then from there, we reach up to the forest again, which is the climax community. So here with time we are converting a water body into land ultimately, and it is becoming a mesophytic community, right? Now what happens in secondary succession? Species there invade, right, a particular succession. Now that depends on the condition of soil and availability of water. Then comes the outer environment, right? So since soil is already there, as we said, the rate of succession will be much higher and climax as well will be reached quickly, right? Now let's just understand the same with this diagram. Now here what you see is one, the phytoplankton stage. So here we just have phytoplanktons, right? Then we have some submerged plants. After submerged plants, we get some free floating plant as well. So submerged, free floating. So we have some submerged and some free floating, right? Then we get the reed. Now we have the swamp, a lot of plants now, right? So swamp stage, then these grow and they become meadow. So this is the marsh meadow stage. Then comes scrubs. So this is the scrub stage. And ultimately we get the forest community. So, guys, this is all about the ecological succession. I hope you would have understood the concept. Basically, it is nothing to remember as such, but you should remember the concept of a community and how this ecological succession takes place in each and every community. Guys, I hope you would have understood the concept. If you did, please do like the video and share it with your friends. And if you have any doubt in regards to this topic, please do drop a message on the video and I'll answer it. Or you can also drop a message on WhatsApp. I have provided the WhatsApp number in the description of the video. And yes, guys, if you're new to the channel, please do subscribe to the channel and press the bell icon to get all the updated videos that I'll be posting in future. Thanks for watching this video, guys. See you in the next one. Take care. Bye bye.